'cause they sure did Telluride. It's not living here in Telluride. You're not even here in Telluride. Come find yourself 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 in Telluride. In Telluride.
The post office didn't know where to send the mail, whether to Columbia, Telluride, or Columbia, California. And so the postal department took Columbia away from this area, and that's when Telluride became a name for this place. You know. And Telluride, where that Telluride name come from, you know, there's a lot of arguments over it, because there's no tellurium in Telluride. And it is, they call it tellurium, but actually what it is, it's silvernite and calaverite and kernitite. Those are your telluride minerals. And Cripple Creek was the big producer of them. The only place around here that actually had an abundance of them is down here in La Plata. Out of Durango, they had a little bit down there. In fact, I got a couple of specimens that I hijacked out of that. The first town here was San Miguel out here. That's where the town should have been built. It would have been a lot sunnier, but the thing of it is they charged too much. They charged, I think, $2 for a lot. You can buy one in Telluride for $1. So people moved into there and said, "To heck with you, San Miguelers." But you know, out there in San Miguel, there was I got a list of the people out there. There was about 150 people lived out there at that place. They had a racetrack and they had everything up there, but they charged too much for their property.
Is that more out in the middle of the valley there?
Yeah, right there where the prairie dogs are at.
Tell them a little bit about Tomboy Basin and how many people lived there. And you know, there were movie theaters, there were bowling alleys in Tomboy Basin back at the turn of the century.
Yeah, it was closed down when I was a young punk kid, but it like Bill said, it had a bowling alley and a theater and pool tables. Even it had the highest tennis court in the world at one time, so they said. And you know, in the Tomboy there, the houses and the boarding houses, there was about 400 inhabitants. That many people, more people up there than there were downtown Telluride. And of course, they'd come down once a month, I guess. I don't know, but it was quite a village, that's for sure. Had a schoolhouse, you know.
How'd they get their groceries in here?
Well, before they invented the car, it was on a darn burro. You know, when they built the Tomboy, you've seen these here stamp mills. That's where they crushed the ore years and years ago. Well, the bases on those are a piece of steel, and they weigh 10 tons each. And they literally took 10 of those up to the Tomboy back around the turn of the century. And they, like I say, weighed 10 tons each. And a fellow by the name of George Wagner, I wasn't born at the time, but he told me that it took 75 mules to pull one of them up that trail. But they got them up there. And then in World War II, old Journey come up there and hauled them off and made scrap iron out of it for the war effort. But he brought them down the Tomboy Road. See, the Tomboy Road was not built until 1902. And so the Marshall Creek Trail was very important to get up into all the mines up there, you know. And, you know, the Tomboy is probably the most talked about mine up there, but actually the Smuggler Union was the I don't know how you say it, but it was the best mine. In 1907, it had 900 employees working at that mine up there. You know, it was amazing. The new generation, now I'm not going to give them hell, but you know, they think Telluride when they showed up here in 1972 that it was a ghost town. Well, God dang it, we had about 200 guys working underground, and they all had kids and a family. There must have been 500 or 600 people in town. That's not a ghost town, is it? But anyway, that's their business.
Why did the mining discontinue? Why don't they still mine?
Well, the mining out here, I hate to say it, but in 1971 when they created the, what's that there, the
EPA.
EPA. That was the biggest disaster for mining and sheep grazing and timber cutting you could ever think about. And they just don't do it anymore. do they?
Underground mining is very expensive to do compared to new technology. Like out in Nevada, they strip mine for gold, and there's no way an underground mine can compete cost-wise. It wasn't competition, too expensive to do it that way.
So it became too expensive to mine once the EPA came around?
Well, it was on it. It was going to stop regardless because there were other ways to mine that were more profitable, and so this was going to die one way or the other, regardless of the EPA and stuff. But part of the problem was you see those large tailing spawns out there, and that's a big deal. When I was a little kid growing up here, there weren't any grass growing on those. When we played softball or baseball out there, when the wind started blowing, you sort of got this little white tip to you. And it was, the government, it isn't safe. And so the cost of cleaning up tailings and covering it and all that, it just wasn't profitable anymore. And this was a rather small endeavor compared to some of the large mills out there. I think we produced, 6,000. I worked at the mill for a couple of years when I was going to college, and we did, I'm thinking 6,000 to 8,000 tons a day was our capacity.
Something like that, yeah.
And just so you know, the new mill that they're just starting to operate in Climax at Leadville is 60,000 tons. So, it was small and it was past its time. And the good news is it stayed here long enough to allow the ski area to get established. It ran until 1976, so there were 3 years there that there was a mine and the ski area, so it was actually a good transition back then.
Well, this ski area right here, believe it or not, was started back in 1938 from a school teacher by the name of Bruce Palmer. And it was mainly over on the front hillside in what we call Grizzly Gulch. I guess you still call it Grizzly Gulch, I don't know. But anyway, he was trying to promote a ski area there, and all his kids were cutting trees, he didn't have no saws. And he was the one I always give credit to, really pushing for a ski area in Telluride. I don't think he wanted to do it only for recreation purposes. Matter of fact, Bruce even that was the first ski club that was created in Telluride, not the first and the second. He had a ski school there and would take us over there and go skiing. But in sometime in the late 50s, we a group of us young punks started to promote the ski area again, and that is when they sold stock to the people in Taylor. And I still got mine. I bought $25 worth. That's all the money I had. The Elks put up $12,000, and we gave that money to a guy to go around and try to see if he could promote somebody that had some bucks to do this. And he evidently had a good time because we went broke. And then nothing happened during the 60s other than Jerry Pesman and Jurgen Gertz came down here, and the three of us tried to promote it. In fact, we wanted to buy all the Adams property, but Gene, we could have probably got it for maybe $200,000, but none of us had more than 50 cents, I guess. And then, of course, the thing of it is, just moving on, is that when Joe came here in 1968 in the fall, she said, there's a young guy in town by the name of Bill Mahoney. She said, get a hold of him, maybe he can help you. Well, I don't know how I didn't have no money, but anyway, Joe got a hold of me, and he just seemed like he was the right guy, like he was pretty sincere about things. And so anyway, I got involved with Joe, and I believe it was in October of '68, and he'd already had made these purchases on the Verano and the Adams land, but he needed some other property downtown. You know down there where the coonskin lifts at? Well, that's 18 acres there. And believe it or not, back in 1959, their doctor in town down there, he was an avid skier in Telluride. We used to ski every day when we could go around the rope tow over there. But anyway, he said to me, he said, what do you think about buying that down there? And I said, well, I guess it'd be all right. He said, well, he said, if you can arrange the deal, he says, I'll buy it. So Kelly McKnight owned it. Now, this was 18 acres. And so I went up to old Kelly's place, and I said, you want to sell that Dakota Placer, that portion? He said, well, yeah. I said, what do you want for it? He said, $500. I says, a done deal. And I went to O'Connor, he wrote a check for $500, and then he gave me half of it, and he took half of it. We eventually sold it to Ron Allred. Should have kept it, made more money, but whatever. But anyway, that's those things. You just wonder how close you come now. If we hadn't had that, there'd been no base area down there, and that was the key to the town of Telluride, that's for sure. But anyway, we got a hold of that, and then old Albert Backlund, he was a Finlander down there, and he owned a lot of pluff with the places where the Telluride Lodge was at. But I took him over and took Joe over and introduced him to Albert. And Albert was the kind of a funny, well, he was a typical, Finlander. He wouldn't let you come in the house. But anyway, old Joe finally got good friends with him, and he bought where the Telluride Lodge is at. And there were a lot of mining claims. Should have bought a lot more, but I don't want to get into that because I get really teed off about that. Mistakes are made, But anyway, that's how it's all put together, just in little pieces here and there, And if you don't control the land, you can't do nothing.
Yeah, tell them about Emil coming over.
Oh yeah, well, we had several so-called expert people on skiing from Aspen down there. Aspen's a pretty gourmet place. I won't mention any names, but we had a lot of them come down there, and not every one of them come down there, and they would go up, not in the wintertime, but in the summertime, and they would walk up through the area there, and they said, there's no potential down here. They didn't use those words, but they didn't think there was a possibility. And of course, they were right on one thing. Telluride was hard to get to. It kind of struggle to get to today sometimes. Except we got an airport now. But anyway, I don't know who put Joe on the Emil Lay, but he came over here. I believe it was there in either February or March of 1970, and I was working for Joe at that time. He asked me if I'd go to work for him, and I went to work that spring. And so I guided Emil around the mountain, and we literally spent 2 weeks skiing every goddamn possible place there was, from Prospect Basin off the top of Palmyra, Gold Hill, front hillside, and whatnot. And he was a hell of a skier, I'll tell you. I had to go like him to keep up. But anyway, I did. Anyway, then Emil come back, and he come back in a couple months later, and then that's when he and I really laid out, started to flagging all the trails. It had ribbons all over, And the thing of it is that this was in 1970. Now, we didn't even have a special use permit. And then I think it was in October of 71 is when we got the first, permit to put a ski area here from the Forest Service. But I really believe that if Emil Lay hadn't been here, I don't think the Forest Service in this area knew who Emil Lay was. They didn't know much about anything really, other than cutting timber and sheep raising. And anyway, the guys out of Delta knew that Joe had hired somebody that was real respected in the ski industry. And I believe that was the key to getting the special use permit in 1971. And it just, he was one hell of a guy, I'll tell you, that's for sure.
Where was Emil from? Was he from France? Or?
Did you ever hear, I think it's called Fellaine, yeah, some darn thing. In fact, that's where he died here not too long ago. We were 99 years old.
But he won a gold medal. He won 3 or 4 medals in the Olympics for France back in the day. I'm not sure exactly what.
He's the one that invented parallel skiing. That's what the book says.
Billy, you drew the line for the ski area permit boundary.
Yeah.
You want to talk about how you decided to do that?
Well, the thing of it is that there was some discussions about that, that in 1959 when Jerry Pesman and I drew it, we drew it, and we didn't include Prospect Basin or a lot of that Scum Creek and that kind of stuff. And then, of course, when in 1970, I think 1969, I got the map of it when I drew the line around there. I don't know, I was talking to somebody, I think it was a meal of lay maybe, you know, because that was after the fact. But somebody told me that make it big. Big is always better. And that's true. If I hadn't drawn that line around there, they'd probably been hell getting Prospect Basin developed. And then a few other things, you know. I should have went clear over to Silverton, but I didn't. Of course, we had a dream of going over there at one time, you know. How do people realize that? I got maps that we drew on that. Our philosophy on that was, and we actually promoted this, that you could get in an airplane in New York and fly down to Durango and catch the train up to Silverton and ride these series of lifts and clear over to this area and then get on the airport here and go back to New York. And I don't think anybody believed this, but you know, anything's possible. But you know, that Bear Creek over there is there's a pretty goddamn nice skiing over there. This guy that was at my house, he's an ex-forest ranger, and you guys have heard about Palmyra Peak, and then what's that other one there? San Joaquin. Well, back from that is a little mountain up there, and he'd been trying to find the name of it. Well, I happened to pull up an old map that I had. It was made in 1926, and they called it Bear Mountain. We skied off of that, and that would have really been a neat place to put a lift over there, you know. And you would have had early skiing, and it's a north exposure, so you'd have snow early and late. But didn't happen. Of course, I'm going to say something that maybe it'll make everybody make you mad. Johnny Stevens always puts out the propaganda that he was the second employee. You know who the first employee was that Joe hired? My wife. He needed a bookkeeper, and she kind of knew a little something about it. And then I got a whole list of them, but it was my wife, a young guy by the name of Bill Clark. Dave Farney was actually not hired, and I was hired, but Farney and I were both kind of consultants, you know. And then I believe that after that, was it Tom Sharp? Tom Sharp, and then Alan Rana and Jr.
Ed Bowers was first.
Oh, Ed Bowers was the first one that actually cut trees. And then Johnny was hired when he got out of the Army in August, so he wasn't the second employee. I see that in the paper all the time, and I don't want to make you mad. If anybody believes it, that's fine. And when did you go to work?
Oh, it wasn't until early 80s.
Oh, yeah, you worked for Ron Albright, didn't you? Put a kid on the block.
Talk about the snowcat tours before we had lifts.
Well, that snowcat skiing was something that Joe wanted to promote, and so in 1970 and 71 and 71 and 72, those 2 winters we conducted snowcat skiing. Had an old fire call, and it worked pretty well. And we advertised. You've probably seen those posters. There's a little blue one, and then there's a big brown one. That was the promote skiing, snowcat skiing. For the first year, you could get an all-day skiing for, I think it was $7.50 plus lunch. And we had over here, where you go down to John Horn's house over here, that was our first base facility there. It was a little sheep herder shack. And that's where we would get the people and take them up and give them all-day skiing. And actually, I think the first year we had about maybe 300. And then the second year we got another snowcat, and that's when we hired Johnny and Gowdy. Ed and Bowers and I run the first year, and it was a fun thing, you know. To always had fresh powder out there every day. Of course, you didn't have no ski runs. That was the problem, is that, you know, most of the people that came in there, they were not tree skiers, that's for sure. You know.
Where did you take them? How high up did you
Well,
take them?
we would kind of go up around the Grano place because it was a little bit open, and we'd kind of evaluate them. If they looked like they could stand on their skis and not hurt themselves, well, then we would go up to the top of 9 and ski the Mammoth Slide. You know.
And log pile.
Or the log pile, you know, and places like that, you know. And of course there was a lot of them that, believe it or not, they were not, a lot of them came from back east and they couldn't ski the powder. You know, the boilerplate, yeah, they could just go back in on it.
Senior, you said your favorite job was mining.
Yeah.
Well, give us an idea of a day in the life of a miner. You know, what time you get to work, how you get up there?
Well, it wasn't so much that. It's going underground. I mean, you can't believe some of the beautiful crystals that you find occasionally. And there's always a chance to find a little high grade, which I did. But I remember one place back there, back that was about 35,000 feet. I stayed underground there. We drove a raise up there, and I was a boss at that time. And I went up there, I don't know, it's probably about 300 feet. And they had just blasted a round up there. The guys were up there barred down and whatnot. And I looked over there, and there was a hole back in there, and so I made it a little bit bigger. And I'll bet you there was a room back there the size of at least maybe of a diesel truck. And it was all full of big, beautiful crystals. That Bill's got one on his table over there in the ski ranch, haven't you? It's a big white one. And it was just things like that. They're just, and every time you see one, it's a little bit different. Cecil Goldsworthy, he's got a heck of a few, or he's dead now, but he's got a heck of a collection. I got a few, you got a few. But I guess that's the thing that intrigued me more than anything. And then what do you call it, where being around the guys out there, the lies they told and the lies I told, and things like that in the doghouse when you was having your lunch and whatnot, you know, they were all uneducated people, but they had some great stories to tell, you know, they really did, you know. In fact, in my family, my dad started mining in 1905 in Bonanza, and I mined until 1970, and I had 5 brothers that all mined, and I guess in our family it must have had about 20 uncles that all mined too, so, well, that was what Colorado was. It was not anything else but mining, you know. But anyway, it's to be underground, to me, that is a thing. There's 2 things I miss: mining and skiing. And my dang feet went to sleep, so I can't ski anymore, and that really makes me mad. But that's life, I guess, you know. That all the young people. I got a little great-granddaughter that's going to get pretty good.
So, Senior, could you wrap up? We're all trying to carry on what you started. What advice do you have for us?
Well, all work together mainly, you know, this stuff of somebody out trying to outdo the other fella, you know, it's important to keep the thing going, you know. I don't know what else to say about it, but, you know, you got to work together, you know. And if you don't work together, and you might not like what one guy says, but, you know, maybe he's got a better idea than what you got, I don't know. But it's very important to keep this here ski area in operation, because if you don't have that, you ain't got nothing in this canyon. You know, people say, well, you got the bluegrass. Well, that's true. You got a lot of festivals, but now that they're here, that might be all right. But you gotta have something like this: mining and skiing. And skiing it replaced mining. Thank God it did.
Memories, they sure did tell you right. It's not living here until you ride. You're not even here until you ride. Come find yourself and tell you right. Come find yourself and tell you right. Come find yourself and tell you right.